Hey, everybody. Before we start this episode of Life, Liberty, and Truth, we're going to tell you a little bit about Anchor. Anchor is the app that we use to do all of our recording, all of our editing. Basically, it is the backbone of our podcasting.
Yeah, a big shout out to Anchor. We love using this app. It's a great tool for, helping us do this podcast. Yeah, go check it out. If you'd love to start your own podcast, you can go download it from the free Anchor app, or you can go to anchor.fm to get started.
Yeah, we hope you guys enjoy this episode. Go check out Anchor. See ya. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Life, Liberty, and Truth. Christian and Jared here.
What's up, everybody?
And today we bring you what's the thing that's kind of been in the news a lot recently, the Equality Act, which has been now passed by the House and is going to the Senate. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what it means. We're going to talk about why it's not actual equality, but why it is framed as, framed as sounding like it is for everyone's benefit. So,
Right, yeah.
to start
It's all
off,
a ruse.
for those of you who have not heard of it, I just kind of gave an explanation, but it's named after the Equality Act because it's supposed to basically be an expansion of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which kind of ended Jim Crow laws of segregation in the South and brought pretty much actual equality,
Yeah, it's the
voting
civil
equality,
rights,
and
basically.
basically
Push.
ended the civil rights movement,
Yeah.
brought actual equality to Black people all across the country. That stopped any kind of discriminatory actions to keep them from
Right.
voting or to keep them from any segregation
Segregation,
laws.
yeah.
Jim Crow. If you don't know what that is, check out Jim Crow. Basically, segregation. So,
Pretty much.
that's what it is. It's supposed to be an expansion, but instead of protecting people based on race or skin color, because I think I've said this before, I don't like the word when we say race. I only use it because that's what everybody means. Because we're all one race, we're the human race, right? So
Yeah.
what people should say more is nationality or pigmentation, skin color, not race, because there's only one race. There's the human race,
Yep.
right? Okay.
If you bleed red, you're human, right?
Well,
And we should all respect each other.
dogs bleed red.
Yeah, but I mean, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If you're a person, stop trying to undermine my great thought provoking explanation here, right? So, I mean, if you bleed red, you walk on freaking two legs,
If you can
or
speak,
I don't know.
walk on two legs. Think for
But I
yourself.
guess that could be an issue if you have disabled people. And
Okay,
so,
we don't need to
yeah,
get
I kind of
technical
butchered
over
that,
it.
but you know
We
what I
don't
mean.
need to get technical over it. Okay. So
Not trying to get too technical. Yeah. Thanks, Christian.
you're welcome. So basically, what this is though is the Civil Rights Act 1964 was a protection against discrimination. Well, this is very different. This isn't protection. This is forced conformity, right? This is being fined by the federal government, losing your funding if you're a school or an organization. You could mean losing nonprofit status. Basically,
Businesses could affect that.
It it affects churches and religious freedom a lot. We're going to talk about that, but it's a forced conformity. So before we start, there's this definite, or there's kind of an explanation of it that New York Post put in the title. Biden's Equality Act is a danger to women's and conscious rights. So, by Ryan Anderson. It's not quite Biden's, but because he's president, it goes under him technically. So, how he describes it is right here: is rather than finding common sense, narrowly tailored ways to shield LGBT identifying Americans from truly unjust discrimination, the bill would act as a sword to persecute those who don't embrace newfangled gender ideologies. It would vitiate a new binary that is quite literally written in our genetic code and fundamental to many of our laws, not least laws protecting the equality, safety, and privacy of women. So what he described as right here is the bill would act as a sword. So, right, 1964 Civil Rights Act, that was a protection against being discriminated against. This is a sword. This punishes you for doing it, right?
Yeah, this is going to hurt people more than it actually helps.
It's intended to hurt people.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a couple of the things that are included in it. So number one, it allows biological men who identify as women to compete in women's sports and go into women's locker rooms and schools and basically any public government funded facility, right? This is what we're talking about if you're going to lose funding. So if you are a private school, or more likely a private college, Christian college, that or not identifies, but they that are is a Christian university
Yeah.
who supports, conservative values, or supports, biblical
They
definition of man
stand
or
on
a
their
woman.
religious practices,
Yes.
basically. Yeah.
Um, it's going to persecute you. So you're either going to get pulled funding. The government will not send you money anymore, because that's what happens, or they will fine you. It's kind of a big deal, because even private schools rely on government funding for the most part. Most of them do.
Yeah.
So if you don't conform to this, if you don't allow a man, a a biological man who identifies as a woman, a transgender woman, to participate in female sports, then you're going to lose funding. It totally destroys feminism in general. So, whatever wave feminism you believe in, second wave, third wave, it totally destroys that, because if you are a traditional feminist and you believe in equality, then competing against a man isn't equal. You know what I mean? I think, have we talked about this before, where men and women are biologically different. Science proves it, right?
Yeah.
From the way that our shoulders are designed, the way our bone structure is, the way that our muscles develop, the way that we train, men are physically bigger, faster, stronger
More
creatures.
dominant. Yeah. Just in that nature.
That's just the way God made us, right?
Biology, bro.
That's why, exactly. That's why we have men and women sports, because men can compete against men, women compete against women. In most sports, not all, most sports, women can't. In a physical sport, I guess I should say, a man can't compete against, or a woman can't compete against a man, just physically can't keep up, right? That's why we have women's sports, is so that women can compete against each other, and it's more fair. It's in
Right.
fairness, it's more equal, because you can actually compete and have fun. I forget who said it, but there was a famous tennis player who was retired, and he was asked about Serena Williams, and he was like, she he was interviewed, and they asked her, "Oh, how good is she, or is she the greatest all time?" And he said, "She's the greatest female tennis player of all time." And they're like, "Oh, well, why isn't she the greatest player?" And he comes back and he says, she's not the greatest tennis player of all time.
Because I
She's
am.
the
No, I'm
greatest.
joking.
She's the greatest female player of all time.
Yeah.
Because if she was a man, she'd be ranked in like the hundreds. She
Yeah.
dominates women, but if she was a man, she would be absolutely destroyed, right? So that's our point. So if you're a feminist and you are for women being able to compete against women, then this does not help you at all. And if you are a third wave feminist, which essentially, in my view, is uh, seeing
Hates men.
women, yeah, hates men, sees women almost as greater than men, even though they probably wouldn't say it, but fights
All men are
fights to be
disgusting. Don't do anything
exactly.
to help. I can
There are too
live
many
life
men in
without a
power.
man.
That
Yeah.
kind of feminist. So you're taking away women's ability to compete against each other. You're going to take away the ability to be top, because of a third wave feminist is like women should be above men and everything, right? Whatever. Well, this is going to take biological men and put them above women, right? That's
Yeah.
essentially what the Equality Act is, and it's very dangerous for women, because it's not just locker rooms, but it's bathrooms. Any bathroom. We're going to get into that under a different section right now, but if you are a parent of a daughter, say freshman girl who
Yeah.
plays sports, or PE classes, you don't even have to play sports. This doesn't even affect
Yeah.
athletes, because it's locker room in general. So if you have freshman daughter, then she's going to be able to be in a locker room after gym class with a senior boy who identifies as a woman. And you don't have to have any kind of doctors know. You don't have to have any kind of this or that. It's literally just
How
whatever
they
you
feel.
feel.
Yep.
So with that logic, I can just feel like a woman one day, and someone could be a rapist, someone could be, a child offender.
Mm-hmm.
With the idea that I can identify as whatever gender I want, what's stopping you from age?
Yeah.
Okay, so if
Nothing.
I'm a 45-year-old man, I identify as an 18-year-old girl, and I want to go play girl sports. That
Yeah.
happened. That happened. And there was a basketball team. I forget what it was. College basketball. This guy is like 30 or 40. He identifies as a woman. They're letting him play. He's like 6'7".
Yeah.
He's huge.
That's a gateway for pedophilia.
It's
It
huge.
really is, and just sexual harassment in general. Like, come on.
Yeah. So that's what you're dealing with. So when you talk about the Equality Act, this isn't equality. like it's punishment for those who don't believe, who believe in uh, two genders, who believe that uh, transgenderism is gender dysphoria and it needs to be a mental disorder and people
Yeah,
need to be
it's a
have
mental
help for it.
illness.
Be-
Because or go ahead, finish what you're gonna say, and
no,
then
I
I'll.
was just saying people it needs to be treated as a mental disorder like depression or any kind of anything,
Yeah, it's.
ADHD.
I fully agree. It's a mental illness, and here's why. You don't even know who you are. You don't know what you want to be, right? It's like 1 second you feel like, okay, I'm gonna be a man today, and I'm gonna do this and that. But then tomorrow, I'm gonna be a woman, and I'm gonna do this and demand that. Like that's wrong. That's not right mentally.
Yeah.
You're not right in the head there, and that should be a red flag, and that problem should be fixed.
Well, and before we go on, we expand on that. Let's talk about um, as Christians, people are obviously going to go and jump at you like, oh, you're not loving, you're not uh, accepting. It has nothing to do with being loving or accepting. It has to be do with reality.
Yeah,
I can have compassion for you, and I can feel bad for you, and I can offer you help without accepting the behavior that you're in. Right? You don't find a schizophrenic person on the street, and you don't go and say, oh yeah, whatever reality that you're living in right now is true, and I need to adjust my norms to it, right? If there's a schizophrenic person on the street, you get him help, and you have compassion with him, but you don't conform to what he says, and you don't play into his uh, sociopathic, not sociopathic, uh, you don't play into his mental illness, right?
yeah,
So it's the same thing here. Why are we pretending that um, these people who are essentially delusional in many aspects of the word, why are we just going to pretend like everything's okay and we're the ones that aren't normal for not accepting it? So, um, you know, that's what I don't understand, right? So there's another part of this article that kind of talks about what we just talked about too, and it takes it straight from it quotes the act itself. Let me find it here. Okay, it says, "Don't believe me. Here's the text. An individual shall not be denied access to a shared facility, including a restroom, locker room, or and a dressing room. That is in accordance with the individual's gender identity." So and then it goes on to say, "Can you?" Or the article says, "Can you?" So you can keep separate facilities for men and women, but you have to redefine what men and women are. Likewise, you can reserve certain jobs only for men or women. Think TSA agents doing pat downs, but you have to let a man who identifies as a woman do strip searches on women. So, um, like we were just saying, how it's dangerous. But there's another aspect of it. Uh, let me go over the TSA agent part. So when you go and you get patted down because people think that you might have a gun or something
right.
after you're trying to pass through security in an airport, right? Basically it's going to allow a biological man to pat down a woman or a biological woman to pat down a man, right? That's dangerous for obvious reasons, right? You don't want a man patting down another man or a woman patting or you don't want a man patting down a woman, right? That's just dangerous. Like that's just common sense. But the other part of it is that it there was all this talk about like gender neutral bathrooms, right?
Yeah,
A couple years ago, right? And all this stuff. Basically this, but not it hadn't been going through yet. So it's not going to do like that where people are like, oh, gender neutral bathrooms. It's going to redefine what gender is and keep men and women, but allow men to go in women's and women go into men uh, without with basically you don't have to have any proof because if you're in a department store, and you say, what man walks in, no one's can stop you.
yeah,
It would be illegal under this, right?
yeah.
So
And so that, I mean, you're right, and it may not even just be a religious like belief why people may be against, um, just let's just say for example, trans rights. Now, I personally don't believe that. How do I say this? I don't agree with trans rights or not trans rights. I don't believe in like the trans movement. Okay, here's why. Like we've stated before, we believe in the nuclear family. We believe in a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and that's it, right? Two genders, that's it. And so, but now we're in a culture where we have to. I mean, we're already conforming to it a little bit because we want to support these rights, right? These gay rights, these trans rights. Um, the list goes on. But I do believe that even though I don't agree with their lifestyle, I think we should treat them as human beings, correct?
Exactly.
And so that's what I'm getting at is I don't agree with their lifestyle. I don't agree with what they do, on their own time, but they should have their human rights. But now this trans rights, these gay rights, all this stuff just creates further division, right? It's gonna just categorize people into different boxes more and more, right? And so we're already in a kind of a race war with, black, white, Asian, Mexican, Indian, it doesn't matter.
Latin, yeah.
And so we all want, even Black Lives Matter. It's like we want equality, right?
What
And
is
so,
equality though?
yeah,
Because what your idea of equality is and what MLK and actual civil rights reformers idea of equality is very different.
yeah, it's I want my daughters and my sons to be judged not by the color of their skin, but the content of their character,
Yeah.
right? That was Martin Luther
That's
King.
equality.
Yeah, exactly. So I agree on those 100%. And when you start categorizing people and creating boxes for people like, oh, you're white, you're black,
It's because
you're Asian,
it's
you're
a
Mexican, you're
politics
this,
of
you're that.
oppression.
All right, let's just stop telling people you're this, all right, and accept them for one, what they look like, because like we said before, we're all human, we're all children of God, so it really doesn't matter what we look like, we're human beings.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Jared said a little bit, or mentioned it. Where he said, we're not fighting against your human rights, right? So
Exactly,
there are
yeah.
basic human rights that we all have. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, all that stuff, property, um, religious freedoms. That's all right, right? Everything outlined in the Constitution is human rights. Uh, Now here's the thing. At least biblically, arguing from a biblical perspective, gay marriage is not a human right, right? Because marriage is fine as between a man and a woman.
Yep.
So we're not fighting against like rights per se, because people are like, oh, you're not compassionate, you're not this. You can be compassionate and still disagree. Like
Exactly.
it's not your right to drive; it's a privilege.
And here's the thing, I just because I disagree doesn't mean now you have to be mad at me for disagreeing with your
Or that
lifestyle
we're not sympathetic.
or force people to conform to your lifestyle that they're doing in this act right here.
Yeah.
This,
And
you
so
know,
we can be against it and be like, okay, we agree. You have certain rights as a person, right? You have the rights outlined in the Constitution. We all do. We're not talking about that. Like, yes, I don't believe that, or let me rephrase that. I don't agree with a gay person's lifestyle, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to just take everything away and like dehumanize it
and hate them. Yeah.
and hate them. Yeah. I cannot agree with your lifestyle and still love the person or have sympathy for the person, right? You know, I don't agree that a man and a woman should live with each other before marriage, but it's not my responsibility to go out and like prevent you from doing it necessarily, right? Like I'm going to
Should spread awareness,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. I can't tell you not to do that. Like I can tell you, but that whatever I said has no power. And I can disagree with you, but I could still have sympathy for you, and I could still, do all these things where people always say like, "Oh, Christians have no sympathy" or this and that, and then they go and they say like, "Oh, you're so hateful." No, it's not being hateful. For one, when everyone says, "Oh, love everyone," Jesus loved everyone, so you need to be more loving. Well, what is loving? Because loving is not just an emotion. Loving is an action. If you love someone, you tell them the truth, you tell them what's going to save them, right? That's what love is. There's more to love. There's a whole outline of love in the Bible of what love really is. Love is not just an emotion. Love is not just being nice to everybody, but love is also telling people what they need to hear, even if they don't want to hear it.
Yep. The truth hurts, right?
If your kid is getting into all kinds of trouble, or if your family member is getting into all kinds of trouble, or all this stuff, if they're going to hurt themselves and they don't want to hear it, but that you still have a right, you still have the obligation to tell them to keep them out of trouble, even if they're not gonna like it, but
Yeah.
it's in their greater good. It's in looking out for them, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You should. Yeah. Exactly. Like what Christian said. And I mean, if we're gonna still, lightly touch on the religious perspective, like, yeah, like you just said,
Well,
well,
we really,
Jesus loved
yeah,
everyone. Well, He called the Pharisees a pit of vipers.
He flipped the tables, but no
Well,
one wants to mention
yeah, I
that.
mean, yeah, that wasn't like it was a righteous anger because there's a lot of
Yeah,
like
but people always
behind the
say,
scenes
"Oh,
stuff going on. But yeah,
Jesus was loving, Jesus was always kind, and all this stuff," but they don't want to point out like the things that they don't want
yeah,
to see about
I mean,
Jesus, like flipping over the tables.
yeah, everyone. I guarantee you, when Jesus called the Pharisees a pit of vipers, everyone was like set aback from that. Like, did he just say that? Because he was saying that not only because like they need to hear it, but because that is the truth, and that's what he was thinking right there. And there was no time for a compassion. It was a I'm telling you what you are right now, and that's what you're doing. Like you need to turn from what you're doing because it's wrong. And so that should be the same perspective that we see today is let's tell people like the truth. And you may not like the truth and that's okay, but we're going to keep telling you anyway,
Yeah, and
whether you agree with it or not,
you
but
know,
we're going to respect your lifestyle
and that's one of
and
the
you're going
great
to respect ours.
that's one of the great spot or great things about having freedom of speech, right? Is that I can tell you something and you can tell me something, but we can listen. We don't have to listen, but I'm not going to get in trouble for it. You're not going to get in trouble for what you say. You have the right to say what you want to say, but you don't have to listen. It's not like you're forced conformity. Now, under this is forced conformity, right? So I can tell you something, but you don't have to listen to me. But not according to this. This is you have to do it, right? And it's favoring one side over another. So um, let's actually move into the religious part of it. Uh, actually, let's touch on abortion. Abortion's kind of actually, let's see. Let me see what I have in my notes. Yeah. So
Yeah, just
abortion.
abortion.
hmm Um. So basically, any institution who is a certified doctor or um, religious institution. So I guess this kind of does go hand in hand with religion, but we're going to talk about it separately because the issues are slightly different. So for abortion, it universalizes abortion, right? So what does that mean? If that means if you're a Christian doctor or you work for a Christian hospital or you are a Christian hospital, clinic, a Bakersfield Pregnancy Center, that kind of thing, then you are now being forced to give abortions as healthcare. That's what
Yeah.
this is what it universalizes abortions. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you morally disagree, for religious purposes, for moral purposes, we have religious freedom. This violates your religious freedom.
Yeah.
If you say morally, religiously, I can't do this, it's saying too bad. If you're a Christian doctor who does not agree with abortions, or who more like I just said morally does not agree with it, you're now going to be forced to have to do an abortion. Um, Sex reassignment surgery is also same thing. Uh, Back to the article, it says it gets worse. Medical doctors, secular and religious, whose expert judgment is that sexual reassignment procedures are misguided, would now run afoul for our civil rights laws. If you perform a mastectomy. Sorry. In the case of breast cancer, you'll have to perform one on the teenage girl identifying as a boy, all in the name of equality, and no one knows what is required under the act to avoid committing discrimination in the case of non binary gender identities. So, again, if you believe in a man and a woman, you have to now operate uh, on a transgender person. You have to. Legally, you have to.
Yeah.
And again, the act treats any refusal to offer abortion as pregnancy discrimination. Sisters equality, pregnancy discrimination apparently is now a thing. Decades of conscious protections against abortion extremists uh, at the federal, state, and local levels would be undermined. It it just destroys all of your freedoms, all of your morality. It forces you. It's basically becoming a totalitarian state. Good news is this hasn't passed in the Senate. It's only passed in the House, which is not surprising. Uh, as much as I would want
We'll
to
see what
say
happens.
I would be surprised if it would pass in the Senate, I
We
I
have
would
some weak Republicans, so I honestly would not put it past them,
yeah.
to be honest.
So
There's
in the Senate, it is majority Democrat, but not by a big enough margin to technically be um, passed if everyone votes according to their party, right?
Yeah.
Whatever their party stance is, um, because you have to have a majority. Now, there's not a big enough majority Democrats in the Senate to pass it, but this is so outrageous and so terrible that I have a feeling it probably will get passed just because, you know, Biden's president now,
Well,
and
and
now I just expect everything
well,
bad to happen is going to happen.
you know that these Republicans are there for to secure their next,
Yeah,
election vote for their seat, right? So, yeah, they may disagree with it, but they might just vote that way for this bill because they want to keep their seat.
yeah.
Because if they're not for gay rights, which let me go back just a second. Um, I will say one thing that I do agree with on Biden. Okay, I agree with Biden on one thing, probably a couple, but this is the one thing I do. And he said it before, but he said that a long time ago, and people were hating on him for it. But he said that marriage is between a man and a woman
I
in an
I I,
interview.
I have a huge doubt that he would stay
No,
with
what?
that.
Yeah, I agree, but that's what he said back then,
Well, a lot of
and
people said that. You know,
people were hating
well,
him
real quick,
for it.
in the 90s, did you know that California actually prohibited gay marriage because the state, I believe in the state constitution, they said marriage is between a man and woman, and they would not allow gay marriage in California in the 90s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but what I'm saying is, like, then they had the argument like, "Oh, Trump is more for gay rights than Joe Biden
Well,
is,"
he
and they
was.
use that right. Well,
Well, yeah.
exactly. But again, I don't agree with those rights, and I side with Biden on that. Is like, even though maybe he stands on that pedestal now, which he probably doesn't. I know
Well,
he doesn't, but that's what he said,
he's
and
yeah. What he says.
that's what I respect him for back then. Is that he knew better. He was, and that was just the thing. And they use that as like a political thing, like, oh, Biden's not for gay rights, and so
Well,
that's why
yeah.
Trump is the most pro gay, which it's like great, you have gay rights, but
He had.
it's still
I
wrong.
don't know now that Biden's in office what it technically is, but when Trump was president, he had more gay cabinet members and people that worked in the White House. He had more gay people than any president ever before.
Yeah,
And so, you know, just because
but then there
going,
you go, right there. You're putting people in boxes
yeah,
instead of just having a person there that's qualified for that position and being good at their job.
well,
Now it's all about their color or their sexual orientation. That has to stop
that's why I also hate the thing
because it's going to
about,
get out of control.
yeah, that's why I always hate when people say, oh, she was the first woman, or if this was the first black man to, I don't know, go step on the moon, whatever. I forget, but people always have all these achievements. It was the first. He's the first. She was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic. According to feminism, if you want to be equal, you don't see each other as you don't see each other as black. But colorblind. You don't see each other's gender. You're the first person. Feminism is equality. Man and women are equal, right? They equal value. So why are we always saying, "Oh, this is the first man, this first woman"? By identifying that if you're the first man, you're first woman, you're the first colored person, whatever, you're just saying that you're just acknowledging that you're lesser in a way, right? Because if all these people did it before you, now granted it's different if there was actual discrimination or like
Yeah,
back in the 60s, right before Civil Rights Act. That is slightly different, I'll agree. But now, if we're counting now, uh, Kamala Harris being the first
I don't even know
woman
what she is.
woman
She said she was black, but I don't
woman
know. An
Indian.
Indian.
Yeah, because no, she wasn't first Indian because there's actually a Native American vice president under I forget who it was. It might have been
N-
Roosevelt's vice president. Could be wrong. Not Teddy, not
Oh
FDR.
yeah,
I could be wrong. But there was actually a Native American president in the early 1900s. I believe it was um, vice
Vice.
president. So yeah, but she was the first, she does saying the first woman. So what are you saying? Are you saying that you have to count women vice presidents because what? Why?
I
If
mean,
you're talking
I
about
think
equality, why?
it's great to identify like, oh yeah, she's a woman, she did this, but like,
Why is it important for that she's a woman though? Because if women are supposed to be equal, or if you're third wave feminist type thing, and you almost believe that feminists or women are better, why are you celebrating it? Not to mention too, if gender is a social construct, why are we celebrating a woman being in vice president? Because technically, your gender is whatever you think it is. And so technically, according to like leftists, there's no such thing as gender. So why are we
That's true.
celebrating a woman being in the off in front and vice president anyway? So it just totally destroys their whole argument because, like I said, for one, if you want to be equal, you don't separate everything. You don't put people into categories like Jared was saying. You don't say, um, "Oh, she was the first woman to do this." The only thing that should be important is the first person to do it.
Yeah.
Man, woman, whatever color, nationality. That's what's important.
Yeah, I also do think that it would be important to, like, I don't wanna say, like, I guess you could say celebrate one's achievement, and not because they're a gender, but just, like, she was a woman and she did this, congratulations. Like, not because, like, oh, she's weaker or anything like this, or the males aren't stronger. It's just that I think that it's okay to, state that, "Oh, yeah, yeah, she was a female and she did this," and then just leave it at that. She
Yeah.
had a g they, achieved something great, he achieved something great, and then you move on from it, and then you stop with the men are better than, women, or women are better than men. It's just, you know, you're right. It just needs to be like a person did this, congratulations. But I do think that it's okay to include that, like, their sex, or their gender, because, I think that's just a good way to identify who they are.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. You can identify the achievement. You can say, "Oh yeah, she did this. That's great."
Yeah.
But if 20 men did it before her, then is her achievement really that great that
Yeah,
she
I
has to
see
be
that there
celebrated?
too.
You have to be celebrated just because you're a woman for doing the same thing a man did? Like, if people can do it, then and women, men and women are, equal in every single way, and women are greater than this and that. Because, I think there are some things that women should have achievements for, like they're like swimming, people like who was the there are certain swimming accomplishments that are just absolutely insane, like swimming oh, I don't even remember. It's like literally swimming miles upon miles upon miles for days and days and days. Like, yeah, that's great. First person to do it, and sports wise, like we said earlier, there are physical things between a man and a woman. But when you're talking about other things, like who discovered, um, I wa- okay, so I watched this. Did you ever watch Kevin Hart's Black History Month thing on Netflix?
No.
So I watched that, and it's basically celebrating. Some of it was good. Some of it was like a guy who escaped and then fought for the Union from the South. Like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, that's great. But they criticized who the explorer who found or traveled the furthest or something into Antarctica. And they're criticizing that guy for taking claim that he was the one who found Antarctica because he had a slave or like an indentured servant, basically a slave, who like took who was in front of him, like he was walking in front of him. And so they say, "Oh no, this white guy didn't actually find Antarctica because the slave was walking in front of him. So that guy is actually the guy who found Antarctica." And it was something basically along those lines, where it's like, "No, the guy was head of the expedition. It goes under his name even if he wasn't the one who officially took the first steps on it."
Yeah.
That's like saying that's like saying Christopher Columbus came over and one of his crewmates got off the ship first, that Christopher Columbus didn't find the Americas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I
it
stepped
does
on the new world first.
that
Get
Christopher
out of here.
Columbus was the person who's head of the expedition, so automatically he's the one who's credited with it, right?
They probably
That's how it
argued
works.
about that, bro. They're
I
like, "Bro, I was the first one to freaking touch land.
Yeah.
Beat that."
Okay, so we're running a little low on time.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the last part we're going to talk about how it dismantles religious freedom as a whole. So we talked about the all the stuff like the removing fines or fines and remove funding. So any church, all of these policies apply to churches also. So abortion clinics, uh, any abortion clinic that's funded by a church or is ran under a church, or not abortion clinics, like a Bakersfield Pregnancy Center, a place that is like adoption agency run by funded by whatever by a church, an adoption agency, or a women's clinic where you can get free ultrasounds, like the Bakersfield Pregnancy Center. You go in, they provide free ultrasounds, free care, free food, like all this stuff to take care of the women and try and talk them out of abortions. those places now have to provide abortions, like we said. So any church, this takes away religious freedoms, like we already said, but it applies directly to churches. So if churches have a men's and women's bathroom, they have to allow transgenders, people who identify as transgender, to go into the other ones. Have
Yeah.
to, under federal law. So it completely dismantles religious freedoms, right?
Yeah, it definitely puts. I mean, it puts a lot of pressure on the church for sure.
And you're gonna have to start taking a stand. Like,
Yeah,
what do you believe? Um, it's just insane because if our religion, how we view it, and there's multiple ways of viewing it. I'm not saying that either one is necessarily right or wrong, even though I believe that mine is, the way I view it is as close to right as possible, because that's what we try and do as Christians. We try and view everything how the Bible exactly tells us how to view it. We try and depict it um, in the best way possible. And that doesn't mean it's perfect, but we're going to stand and hold our
at least our
values.
perspective
Yeah, we're
on
gonna
some
we're
things.
gonna hold our values as closely as we can. We're not going to give them up, because this is what we believe the Bible says. Now, you can believe something different, and that's okay. In the fact of, like, in America, you can do that. I can't tell you what to believe. Now, in God's eyes, it's different, right? And everyone's gonna have to be accountable to God. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm meaning. Is, as an individual, everyone's being accountable to God. But how I interpret the Bible is how I want to be accountable to God, right? And I'm going to have a reason why I'm accountable to God, and that may or may not hold up. But I'm going to try my darnest to live exactly the closest I can to be uh,
Like
in the
Christ.
best position to be like Christ, and to live my life how God wants me to, and Jesus wants us to live our life, right?
Yep.
So even Jesus said, you're going to be persecuted, right? They hated me or they're going to hate you because they hated me first, that type of stuff. So I'm expecting this. Now I'm going to have to take a stand, and I'm going to have to choose. Do I fear government, or do I fear God?
I mean, let's just say all the disciples except for John were martyred.
Yeah.
They
And
all got killed.
yeah,
Well, not killed. They got murdered
murder. Peter,
for what they believed.
traditionally, Peter was, traditionally, they say Peter died being hung
Upside down.
upside down on a cross after he's crucified. He got crucified, and he did not, or he refused to be crucified as Christ, so they crucified him upside down. That's how he died.
Yeah.
There was another story of,
They tried to throw John, I think, in like a pot, like a giant cauldron of oil or something like that.
he didn't
I
burn.
think no, he ended up like escaping or something like
Yeah,
that.
no, you're right, because he escaped, and then they threw him on the island of Patmos, where he received revelation and wrote the book of
Yeah,
Revelation. Got off and died like a year or two later. They were so scared of him, they threw him on the island because he survived that. I remember that.
yeah,
Paul
yep,
was decapitated. They executed Paul.
yeah.
So right, so
Paul wasn't disciple, you know.
he was
Yeah,
apostle.
he
Sorry,
was. Yeah,
but this is
you
what
could
it's gonna
call him one.
come down to, right? And so, but the problem is, America was founded on the idea of religious freedom, because people were being persecuted and martyred for their beliefs, and we were wanting to be different. That's why we decided to have religious freedom. So when you're undermining it, now you're allowing for this stuff to happen, and that's why we fight. That's why we can't support gay marriage or gay rights. I'm not against human rights, right? Everyone has their
Yep,
natural rights given them by God. But gay rights are something else, because gay rights aren't given by God. And that's where our rights, or that's where our beliefs come from, is what natural rights we have given by God. And gay marriage, sorry, I'm sorry, not sorry right now. Gay marriage is abomination in
truth
God's
hurts.
eyes. Truth hurts. Loving, tell you in truth. Sleeping with someone before you're married is an abomination in God's eyes, right? Murder is an abomination in God's eyes. All this stuff. Now, obviously, there are definitely degrees of abomination that are worse than others, right? Uh,
Clearly, yeah,
Wages of sin are death. So all sin is payable by death, right? All
yep,
sins deserve death, but some sins are definitely worse than others. So every sin equals death, but in God's eyes, the we're all saved through grace through Jesus Christ, right? So now our sins have different weight on them, right?
yep,
Does that make sense? Am I
yeah,
explaining that good?
yeah.
Because
That
I feel like that's kind of complicated.
no, that wasn't complicated. I mean, it's pretty easy to follow,
Yeah.
at least
So
for me.
obviously,
Even though I know what you're talking about, and I
yeah.
like.
So So, gay rights are going to be on the lower end of the scale, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to support them just because they're a lesser sin or whatever. I want everyone to, be righteous in God's eyes. Our goal is to save as many people as we can. Obviously that's not going to happen. We know that. But that doesn't mean I'm going to stand up and agree with something that I believe is inherently wrong, right? So I support your human rights. I don't think that you should be killed for being gay. I don't think you should be martyred or persecuted for being gay. But on the other hand, I'm not going to say that it's okay. I'm not going to say that it's right. I morally cannot agree with that. Just like I wouldn't try and agree with someone like I said earlier, some two people who live together before they're married. Like
Yeah.
I'm not going to support that. It to me it's pretty much close to the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean on the level, but that's what we're going against. We're not going against human rights because people say that like, oh, you're not a human right. You don't love people. You're not a human rights activist. No, I agree. I support human rights. Gay rights aren't human rights though. There's
Yep.
a lot of things that aren't human rights people think are rights. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, that's very true.
So I think that's kind of where we're gonna leave it off, or leave off. I hope that made sense. It was kind of a lot. It was kind of might have got a little complicated at times, but I tried to explain it the best I could. Um, and real quick, what Jared talks about is when he says dividing these people into categories, right? Whether you're gay, whether you're straight, whether you're male or female. It's not so much categories as much victim groups, because that's what the left
Yeah.
loves to do. Is they find somewhere that you could become a victim. Women are victims because the male patriarchy, because men have traditionally been heads.
Superior.
In their eyes, yes, right? Because men were able to vote, women were able to vote, suppressed by society, victimized, right? And that's true. Women were victimized in a lot of ways uh, before the 1900s. Then women's suffrage came along, and even with women's suffrage, women were considered lesser in society, right? So with your woman, you're black because you were a slave, you're a victim group. So um, to if you don't understand, or you don't, I guess if you want to learn more about this victimhood mentality, one book I really, 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 really recommend you reading is Fortitude by Dan Crenshaw. Reading it right now. Great book. Talks about why this victimhood mentality is terrible for nations, why it's terrible for people, and if you want to be strong, you can't have this victimhood mentality. So this is what we're talking about when we're fighting against this stuff, and when they're trying to pass this stuff, is they're trying to pass that victimhood mentality. And that's how they get you, is they make you feel like you're oppressing someone, right?
Yeah.
Or that you're being oppressed. Don't see yourself as a victim, right? See yourself as a person, see yourself as someone who's going to overcome every obstacle, right? Because here's what it comes down to. If you saw yourself as a victim for every little thing that you did, no one would ever do anything. People are made when things get hard, not when things are easy, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to learn more about that, if you want to learn how to become not just a better person but a stronger person, read Fortitude. It's a great book.
Yeah. Also, forgot there was another point that we could have put down, but you saw that now Mr. Potato Head is canceled.
Oh yes, same thing.
He is now a victim to the cancel community, just like the Land O'Lakes Indian mom, or uh what was
Aunt
it?
Jemima.
Aunt Jemima, yeah.
Um,
And all the other, what's another one? Give me another quick one.
I'm trying to think. There's a lot of those, too many to count.
Yeah. There's just a lot, and it's dumb. The reason why they canceled
Oh,
Mr.
oh,
Potato Head. What's
oh.
the other?
Trader Jose's.
Oh
That
my gosh, yeah. So gosh, so stupid.
was a lesser known one.
Yeah.
But for those of you who didn't know, 17-year-old dude complained that Trader
Sure,
Jose's was
Jose's.
racist. It was Trader Joe's is Spanish Mexican food line of food at Trader Joe's. They called it Trader Jose's, and apparently that's racist. So even
Yeah.
though it was a 17-year-old white kid who decided that it was
I
racist,
don't know. But
it's probably
I
a
mean,
joke.
they literally canceled Mr. Potato Head because of Mr.
Yeah, and
Because
Coke's. If
gosh,
you didn't
dude.
see, touch on this just a little bit, so you could go look. Basically, Coke had an entire presentation. Uh, Not just a presentation. It was what, a conference. Was it a conference?
I mean, they're probably gonna do a conference, but it was one of those
Oh, it was a training.
yeah. It was
And
a
literally
yeah,
the
course.
theme of the training course was how to be less white.
Imagine
I'm
if that
not
was
kidding.
the other way around.
Yeah,
Be less
it's
black.
literally
Imagine,
it's
dude.
literally
Just
racist.
for a second, just imagine how bad that would be if Coke said
Be less
be
black,
less black.
or
Oh my
or
gosh.
be less Asian,
Dude,
whatever color an Asian wants to be. I don't really. How does that work?
what do you mean?
Well, there's black, there's white. What would an Asian, or I guess Latin and Mexican people identify as brown as
Yeah,
as their color.
right.
We're white. I don't know what islanders are, or like what are they?
They put them in like a mix, but
Yeah.
again, like that's why you like should stop viewing people as like the color of their skin. It's just they're human beings. And so, yeah, it's so stupid. I don't understand why people have to be so they have to pander to all these
Well,
people's
here's the
like.
thing too. What if Mr. Potato Head identifies as a man? He identifies as a man.
I mean,
Maybe.
he obviously identifies as a man
Yeah. Why
because
don't
he's
you just
Mr.
say? Why
Potato
don't you
Head.
say Mr. Potato Head identifies as a man, Mrs. Potato Head identifies as a woman, and worst case scenario is it's why can't Mr. Potato Head be a transgender woman too, or
Well,
or a transgender man,
why does Mrs. Potato Head have to be Mrs.? Let's just get rid of Mrs.
or yeah, why?
If they're gonna get rid of Mister, get rid of Mrs. And then like again, like they're trying to get rid of like aunt, uncle,
Yeah,
grandma.
and
There's gonna
then
be like
did we talk about that? Like,
no, I don't know. We might have talked about it, but that's just the thing is now they're trying to say like, oh, you can't talk like instead of like sister
no,
or brother, you have to
Pelosi
say sibling or something like
Pelosi
that.
banned all gender language in the House. So basically, what that means is you have to say parent, you can't say mother, father, you can't say aunt or uncle. You have to say, I don't remember even what it was. All gender language like that. And then did you hear, like, a couple days later she went and she said, as a mother, aunt, daughter,
And
and listed
grandma,
all of this stuff.
all of the
No,
freak.
no, no, I'm not kidding. She
Yeah,
actually did that. And
I
she's like,
remember.
I sympathize with women, or something like that. And she
Yeah,
literally broke every rule that she made.
yeah, it's funny. I don't. Again, just why are people offended by a freaking plastic toy?
Yeah.
That's how far we've gone. We're offended by Mr. Potato Head. Mr. Potato Head, a fictional character who
Toy
is
Story.
plastic
He's
and
Toy
can't
Story.
hurt you.
Yeah.
What are
It's
you doing?
it's so dumb.
What are
It's
we
so
doing
dumb.
out here?
And like I said, how do we know that Mr. Potato Head isn't actually a transgender man?
I
And it was a
know, like you
female who
said,
maybe Mr. Potato Head was a female who now identifies as a man, and that's why he's Mr. Potato Head. You can't say that I'm wrong.
Mr. Potato Head went through some rough times. Okay,
Basically, here's the best part. If you basically you're assuming Mr. Potato Head's gender.
jacked up, man.
You're
Can't do
assuming
that.
that he's a man. And he's a biological male. So then now you have to
Well,
cancel him.
now they want to call him just Potato Head.
Yeah.
That just ruins the
But you
entire
just
name.
you just assumed his gender.
I guess no one cares anymore,
Yeah.
except for the people that want to offend more people.
Well, and here's the thing too, real quick, last point before we move on. Um, some people, some Christians and stuff say, if you want to identify as a man, I'm not going to agree with you, but I'm still going to call you. If you're a woman, you identify as a man, I'm still going to call you a he, right? I'm not going to do that, and here's the reason why. There are simple truths in life. There are all kinds of truths. The fact that there are only two genders is a truth. I'm not going to bend my reality and bend a truth or lie because you want me to. Because what's next? I've talked about age. If you what Why can't I identify as 45 and run for president? Why can't I identify as 21 and go buy beer, right? Like, who's
You
stopping
could
me? Why can't I identify as an 8-year-old girl and go play with, or go back to school,
elementary school, yeah,
Yeah, or identify as 16 and go back to high school.
right.
I mean, it's not as weird when I say it, but when a 45, 50-year-old man says it, then it's kind of creepy.
Yeah, and they got that weird like voice.
Yeah.
They look
And so
already sus
if
from the
you're
beginning.
this whole thing is rooted in relative truth, and we've talked about relative truth in last episode. Here's the thing. Not relative truth. People don't have individual relative truth. There are truths 100%. There are
Absolute truths. Yeah.
absolute um, truths that no one can deny. Like if the Earth is round, well,
Flat earthers, get out of here.
yeah,
We don't want you here.
people.
If you think the earth is flat, like we're done with you.
Yeah, so there are truths. There's no such thing as your truth and my truth. There is only truth. There are opinions. There's a difference between opinions. There is your opinion and my opinion, but there's no truth. There's no your truth and my truth, right? So if you're going to try and bend reality, I'm not going to do it because it's a slippery slope and it goes against what I believe that there are absolute truths in life, right?
Yeah,
That's
it's
what
gonna keep going and going until
and
like
that's why it's important
it's gonna get old.
because if you can bend a little truth like a man is actually a woman, a woman's actually a man, what's stopping you from saying, well, this people group aren't actually people, or this people group is
True.
actually lesser than other people, or this group isn't as important as other people. That's kind of what they're doing right now is between, black and white. So, and then at what point do you have the fact that, okay, well, now this person group is actually bad, so they don't deserve to live.
Right.
And it just goes and it goes and it goes because you cannot um you cannot take out relative truth, or you cannot take out absolute truths, right? And so that's the whole point that's trying to be made. Jared, we're running out of time. Is there anything else?
Well, no, it's just like you and I being white straight males who are Christians,
The
right?
most oppressed
Like the I
people
mean,
group
we're
right
huge
now.
targets for people, and
We're
that's just the
everything that the
thing
left
is,
hates.
and
Good thing we're
I
not
don't care
cops.
what you call me. I don't care what you call Christian. It's just what was it? There was like that one interview with Morgan Freeman.
Yeah,
I can't remember who it was. He was like
stop
talking
talking
about
about it.
yeah, he was
He
like,
said,
"What
"What?
do you think about Black History Month?" He's like, "I don't want one."
Why do I need a history?
Yeah. Is there White History Month? Is there Asian History Month?
There's Asian Heritage Month,
Well, okay, yeah, but you
but
understand like
that's not
a
history.
specific month
It
where
just
we go
means
back.
people who are from Asia get celebrated.
Right. I'm just talking to the same degree of Black History Month, and then he asked him, "Well, how do you think we're going to defeat racism?" He's
Stop
like,
talking
"Stop
about it.
talking about it."
Yeah, that's what he
Exactly.
said.
Just shut up about it.
Morgan Freeman, Denzel Washington
And
did
if
it
someone
too.
says something that you think is offensive, then I'm sorry.
But here's the thing.
Stop being a
Here's the thing
snowflake
too.
and just move on with your life.
Morgan Freeman and Denzel Washington came from the generation of Martin Luther King, whose parents were involved in the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
They know what actual discrimination is because their actual parents actually faced real discrimination, right?
Yep.
Not this fake like, oh, I got turned down from a job, so you must be racist. But what actually happened was you had no resume, and the person in front of you went to college, and you barely graduated high school, right?
Exactly.
And there's all these other reasons. Don't just take what people say because they said it. Don't be like, don't be that person. If someone says, "Oh, they discriminated on me because of my skin color or my age or my gender," well, age sometimes makes sense because you're not going to hire a 16-year-old or a 15-year-old to be a lawyer, right? So
Yeah.
the age makes sense. So let's not use age right now. There are certain things that age, but I'm going to leave age out right now. If someone says because I'm black, there are probably way more reasons than that. Like you weren't as qualified, you didn't have as good of a resume, you didn't care. Maybe you backtalked
There was
during your
another
interview.
person who just had better like qualities than you
Yeah, and
that
he
had
happened to
the
be
best
white.
experiences. Yeah.
So this whole thing of like everything's based on color is just absolutely absurd and it's frustrating, right?
Yep.
So don't be that person. That's my advice to you right now. Don't be that person who's offended by everything and thinks that everyone in the whole world is against you. Because if people were offended and they quit and they've just blamed everybody else every time they messed up, then no one would succeed in life. Look at Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan could have said, "My college coach cut me because I'm black, and that I'm actually." He said that I'm not good enough, and that's my mom's fault because she didn't push me hard enough. But no, what did he do? And what does his mom do? His mom went out, told him, "You better get better." And what did he do? He went out, he made varsity his next year, and became the greatest basketball player of all time.
Yeah, he's better than LeBron. I said it.
Yep,
I said it.
no doubt, no doubt. And then he came, and what did he do?
And he
he
still
didn't
doesn't say that he's the best.
yeah.
He thinks it's disrespectful to say that.
Not and then what does he do too? He goes out and he plays baseball for a year and starts off absolutely horrible. And he could have blamed other people. He could have said like,
The
my
system.
batting's yeah, everyone's racist. Even though they gave him an opportunity to go play baseball just because he was Michael Jordan, right? If that's not evidence that we're not systematically racist, I don't know what is, because a white guy gave the greatest basketball player ever, let him quit, and then play baseball where he had no business playing, right? Absolutely, yeah, you wouldn't do that if it was systemically racist, right? But he goes out and what does he do? He doesn't blame himself. He doesn't blame other people for the fact that he sucks. He goes out and he gets really good. I mean,
Yeah.
he could have played in the MLB if he would have kept trying. But what he goes back to basketball, and was literally God's gift to basketball.
Yep.
But don't be that person. Don't be a victim. Don't see
Exactly.
yourself, even if you're a victim. Don't see yourself as a victim, because it creates all kinds of
Work
problems.
through it.
There are people who are legitimate victims. Not really in the United States. That's very, 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 very small chance. And unless your parents were abusive, then yeah, you're an actual victim. But you're never going to go anywhere saying, "Oh, I should get this job because my dad abused me when I was a kid." Right? No, you go out and you work hard.
Yeah.
And sometimes there are good excuses, but that doesn't mean you should use your excuses every time you can. You build off it, you get better, and you say
Can't
this
use the
isn't
same
gonna.
card every single time.
Yeah,
It gets old.
you're gonna use it, and you're gonna say, okay, life punched me in the face. I'm gonna get up, and I'm gonna punch it back, and I'm gonna get better, right?
Yep.
So that's where we're gonna end, Jared. Sorry, we went longer than we were supposed
It's
to.
all good though.
Thank you guys for listening. Uh, Follow us on Instagram, Life, Liberty, and Truth Podcast. Uh, if you have any recommendations, any questions, agree, disagree with anything, hit us up on Instagram, DM us. No Twitter anymore, like we said. Parlor has been shut down. Talked about that last time, so we only have Instagram on our social media right now. Um,
About it,
Anything
I
else you
think.
gotta say real quick, Jared?
Nope. That's it.
Thank you for
Just
listening.
stop being a victim. Don't be an idiot.
Yeah, don't be a victim. God's truth over man's truth, right?
Yep.
There are absolute truths, and that is absolutely true. We'll see you guys later.